Hello and welcome to Blame the Dice Wargaming. In this video we're going to talk about 9th edition. Welcome back, and as you can see we have a new face in this new thing that we have going in this transitional 40k thing that we've got going. We have our newest member to the team, Sarah. Say hello, Sarah.
Howdy.
Right, okay, so as you may follow our Instagram, you might not follow our Instagram, but we've got a new member to the team, Sarah. She's amazing, she's awesome, and why don't you tell us a little bit about what brought you to 40k or brought you to the hobby in general?
Well, I didn't start with 40k. I started with Warhammer Fantasy back in I think it was like 1995, 96, and I just really liked the fantasy settings and stuff. 40k was something at the time that I just had absolutely no interest in whatsoever. But when I got back into the game, which was I think maybe about 2-3 years ago or something like that, when it was when Kill Team came out, and it was just the right way to get back into the hobby with like small games and small squads. Yeah,
that kind of skirmish mode. It's great what Games Workshop have done there, sort of to try and entice people into different sort of gaming systems that they've got, especially like into 40k with Kill Team. I'm surprised they've not really tried that. Well, I suppose they have tried to do that with Warcry and Underworld as a sort of subset to get people into Age of Sigmar, and that's certainly something I know in one of the other questions I've got to ask you, which we'll be coming to in a bit about those systems. But the systems that Games Workshop have introduced are fantastic, and once I think they get the claws into you, you're hooked. Right, okay. Believe it or not, people, I do have a script, and that's why I keep looking off screen. We're trying to be professional here. So my next question then is, who or what is your favourite armies? And this is for both 40k and for Age of Sigmar.
Well, Age of Sigmar, it's definitely the same kind of army that I had when I first started, which was orcs, or orcs, as they are now. And I just love them. They're just so good to kit bash, paint, and play with. And yeah, I've been collecting them now, like I think with the classic miniatures as well. Like I've gone back to collecting the fantasy stuff because a lot of the old stuff, like the green skins, can still be used with Age of Sigmar as well.
Yeah. If people, you haven't already done it, please check out Sarah's Instagram. Sarah, would you please tell them what your Instagram handle is, and then they can go and check you out and check all your amazing painted miniatures, which are truly fantastically painted.
I don't know about fantastically painted.
Oh, you too.
But yeah, the Instagram is SJ_DIERU. Yes.
Please, people, check it out. It's some fantastic inspiration, especially some of the Aurochs that they're fantastically painted. And I believe you nearly did. Was it Armies on Parade? Was it second you came for Armies on Parade last year? For your Aurochs?
I think I got best painted for Age of Sigmar, and I came third overall.
Oh,
Well, there were some better ones, and the two that won were the two that I voted for.
Oh, you're too kind. You didn't vote for yourself.
Yeah.
What's all that about? Oh, I don't know. Right, okay. In order to speed things up, let's whittle through this last one. So you know the channel, you've seen the channel, you come to the club, you game with us and all the rest of it. So I've sort of worded this as what will you bring to the channel, but it's what would you like to bring to the channel, and what would you like to show people through the channel? What kind of things do you want to, I don't know, bring and show?
Well, with the majority of the games obviously being Warhammer 40k at the minute, I'd like Age of Sigmar to be on there as well. So obviously then you've got fans of both Age of Sigmar, 40k who are able to access the channel, enjoy the battle reps, and depending on how things go, how many battle reps we can do per week, per month. We may even be able to perhaps do some kill team or Warcry ones as well.
Yeah, I'm certainly very interested in Warcry because I believe it's a lot quicker than kill team to get through. It's like 30 minutes, if that, to get through Warcry.
Yeah. So, I think even if you wanted to do like a best of 3, you'd probably still be able to do that in maybe under an hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that.
Oh, that's the kind of bite-sized sort of content maybe people would enjoy. Cutting through something quite quickly. Looking at Warcry, we've done kill team in the past, but maybe we just need a bit better direction. Maybe look at having some narrative elements to kill team, and and maybe look at bloody cats, go away, and maybe look at tying all, especially kill team and the wider 40k into like a spanning narrative, because I know when we start talking about Ninth, there are some things that will enable us to do that with some of the things that they've introduced. And I'm really looking forward to it. I can't wait. Obviously we're in lockdown at the minute. Hopefully when this gets uploaded, we'll be closer to a sort of less of a lockdown state, which will allow people to record things together, and obviously making sure that we're safe above all else, but making sure that we've got PPE, we've got all the everything wiped down. We're only handling things that we ourselves have brought into the studio, and we can start knocking out some amazing content. That's my hope. That's Mike's hope, and we're truly looking forward to this.
Yeah, until that time, I've got plenty of time to paint the armies, getting ready for.
That's it. Yeah, no, hopefully there won't be any armies left to paint. He says. Right. Okay. So without further ado. 9th edition. How excited are you for 9th edition?
Really excited. A lot of the new stuff that's been shown, the models, the rules, even the box set that's coming out, it just looks incredibly awesome.
Well,
can't wait to try out some of the new match play stuff, some of the new rule changes, phase changes.
On that note of talking about box set, let's have a look at the trailer for the box set from GW. So let's cut into that. I could probably watch that several times a day because those models are absolutely phenomenal. It seems like I say year on year, but edition on edition, Games Workshop are just knocking it out the park with the models, because they are some of the best models I've seen in a box set ever. They just seem to outdo themselves. It's breathtaking.
I mean, the Dark Imperium one with the Death Guard, and what was the other one that they did? The Vigilus one with Chaos and the other Phobos Marines. They were all amazing models. I love the Chaos ones and the Death Guard ones.
Yeah, we both do. we're respect to the 8-pointed star right here, or the 3 circles, the 3 skulls, the 3 Nurgle. So yes, I know where I'm going. So yeah, the 9th edition, the box set looks amazing, but they've stirred up quite a hornet's nest. With rules changes and readdressing the balance for things, and making what they consider the game better for all. But we've got I'll go through them and we'll start talking about them. So the first one, top of my list, is command points. So Sarah, do you want to remind people, if they don't know, about what the command points are and how they were and how they're changing, to give people a feel?
So the command points at the moment are obviously, like, depending on how you build your army, what type of detachments you use, that dictates the number of command points that you're ultimately going to have at the start of the game. Whereas now it's going to be a base set of command points depending on what size game you're playing, whether it's 500, 1000, 1500. So both players are going to start with that, and you're going to use those command points to buy your detachments first of all, and then whatever's left over, you then are going to be able to use in the game. So whereas currently, like, diversifying your army, having multiple detachments, maybe of different types of armies like demons, Death Guard, Chaos, will net you way more command points than somebody who just goes with like a mono army. Whereas now it's encouraging you more to play with the army, the single army, and you're going to be paying more command points to include different armies as allies.
Yeah, I think it was that kind of addressing soup lists. So there was, I think, an article a while back that was talking about, I can't remember who said it, but it was almost that there was no punishment for soups. They didn't want soup in the game, but they still enabled you to maximize your command points. So if you wanted like a loyal 32 with a knight army, you could still do that, and you still got the extra command points that a battalion of guard could give you, even though it was a basic 3 10-man squad and 2 characters, 2 HQ choices. So now there is that. If you want a loyal 32, that's fine, you can have that. However, it's going to cost you 3 command points unless your warlord is in there to refund it. So straight away you get in that punishment for trying to do soup lists or trying to include something else into your army. And they're not saying, oh yeah, we're going to completely punish you. If you want to do that, if you want to have a vanguard, if you want to have super heavy or something, it's going to cost you extra, but it's still not going to penalise you like, say, having a battalion which is like 3. I think like a super heavy is like 1.
Yeah, ultimately it's going to have you thinking a lot more about the composition of the army as to whether or not you do want to add something in, and if that if adding in like a different faction, is it going to be worth the 3 command points for whatever it is that you bring in, or is it worth getting something else from your own army to try and fulfill the same role within the battalion and keep those 3 command points for something else?
See, it's gonna make list building suddenly very interesting indeed. I can't wait. Right, in an effort to speed things up, we'll tootle on through to the next one. So, Overwatch, what is it currently, and what is it changing to?
So currently, whenever a unit is targeted as the target of a charge, they're able to shoot with any ranged weapons that they have if the enemy unit is within range, which is Overwatch, and they fire as many shots as they can shoot, and they hit on sixes.
Yeah.
And that wasn't, it made it really difficult to decide if you were going to try and go in with close combat, because ultimately your opponent was getting like almost a free shooting phase by charging them, and you may end up with a wiped out unit before you even get in. Half your army could disappear before the end of the combat phase, depending on how unlucky you were. But now it's going to a stratagem.
Yeah.
So your opponent can pay 1 CP to use the Overwatch stratagem on one of their units which are targeted for a charge. And unless there's some ability or something like that will allow you to reuse it or double its use or something like that, then it's just going to be that one stratagem you can use during that one turn. And then all the other units afterwards will be able to charge in without fear of being shot at.
Mm-hmm.
So it puts a lot of pressure on your opponent then to, or even yourself, when you're building your army, to think about close combat within the game. Do you have enough characters that are going to be able to survive a turn of close combat? Do you have anything that's going to be particularly juicy for your opponent to charge into that you can spend the Overwatch point on? And it makes Overwatch a little bit more tactical now, which I'm happy about, because I'm wanting to start at the beginning of 9 a Slanesh army, and I was worrying all the time when I was looking at it, going, it's all gonna die in Overwatch.
Well, probably not now, because they get to, what is it? They have Quicksilver. Was it Quicksilver? So they get to move and
they get to run and charge in the same turn, and they get to fight first in the fight phase, which is just great.
Brutal. That hopefully that'll stay ninth and won't change, and give them a level of viability, because thinking
they're entirely a close combat army. They have little to no ranged weapons at all. Same with Khorne. So up until like this thing was released, Khorne and Slanesh and even Nurgle, any of the demon factions apart from Tzeentch, who just relied on close combat, it was just so difficult to make them viable, because they just wouldn't survive getting across the board.
Well, with Nurgle, we both know they'll get there in the end.
They are disgustingly resilient.
Yeah. But this is it, Slanesh.
It's definitely going to make assault phases and charges much more tactical now. Definitely.
Well, there's that stratagem that was released as well, which was cut them down for a CP, where I think if you've got people that want to fall back out of combat with you, you get a D3 mortals or something, or I forget.
I think it's I can't remember exactly what it is, but
something.
I think so. You roll dice equal, I think, to the number of units in the models in the unit, that's chasing them down. And then, so again, it means that you're not doing cheap little strategies of screening and then fleeing and then shooting.
But I'm wondering if wrap and trap is still going to be a thing, and whether you can still fall back, or whether that stratagem of blocking one unit in is still going to be. I
think blocking the unit is still going to be viable, but falling back is now going to be a little bit harder. So even if you don't trap somebody by wrapping them, and they do want to move out of combat, they've then got to think, well, for 1 CP, you can just chase them down and potentially kill them anyway.
This is it. It's going to be very interesting for close combat armies. or just with the whole release of Ninth, the new box set contains intercessors with chainsaws, so it's giving you a flavour that it's going to be much more bloody, it's going to be much more close quarters. And I think that, especially with what they introduced, I think for the Marines, where they changed the chapter tactics, or not, was it chapter tactics? Where
the doctrines.
Doctrines, that's it. Thank you. So it was like heavy, then it was your bolters, and then it was assault at turn 3, rather than having gamey players that would have heavy all the way through and would not change heavy for love nor money, so they could get their extra minus on their death rays of doom, or any heavy weapon, things like that, or grenades. So, but now I think it ties in with that a bit more, that you're progressing towards getting into combat, into close combat.
By turn 3 you should be near the enemy by then, or they should be near you.
If they're not, then something's going wrong, or you're facing Tau. So anyway, that's Overwatch, right? So the next thing, I've put down flyers, and I don't honestly. I've never used flyers. I don't have any flyers in my Death Guard or my Black Legion or anything else. I don't use flyers. So for me, I don't know. What do you think about the changes? If you just want to sort of, at the minute, it's just like a normal unit, but I think it's changing to something else. So.
A couple of the things that they've changed, which I think are going to be really useful, is the ability to fly off the board, which you couldn't really do before, and it then puts them into reserve and allows them to then come back onto the board later on, so they can do like swooping flybys, bombing runs, and then go off the board instead of having to spend 2 turns turning all the way around again to try and do another bombing run. So it's going to make flyers a lot more mobile, and they're going to be a lot more useful around the battlefield, as they should be, because they're going to be they're a lot faster than the units that are actually going to be on the table moving around, like the tanks and the infantry. And it looks like the rules are going to reflect their speed more in the game. And the other thing that I've seen on there was that the ones that are going to get the new fly keyword, you're now going to be able to cross their base without being impeded.
Yeah,
so sometimes
barrier. You couldn't.
Yeah.
Oh no, the
flyers
base is in the way.
Flyers could just sit in between an area, and you wouldn't be able to cross the base, which didn't really make much sense. That essentially the base represents the shadow of the flyer.
Oh,
so it's
no, the shadow! Don't cross the shadow.
Yeah. So now that makes it a lot more interesting for units interacting with flyers and around flyers. Maybe like I don't know whether that's going to make them more useful to certain armies or not, because I know like the Drukhari, the Eldar, whatever they're called now.
Eldari.
The Eldari. And the Orcs especially, who use a lot of flyers. I think it's definitely going to come in handy for them.
It'll be interesting how the meta changes for flyers, especially because that the being able to sort of disappear on off the table is great, but it's still obviously you have to move and then decide whether you're going to move, shoot, and then go off the table in your next turn, which doesn't save you from getting blown apart in your opponent's turn. So there is that's still that risk and reward. Do you hang about? Do you go straight off the table and then come back later on as almost an immediate reserve thing? Or I suppose only the rules will tell whether it's allowed in the first turn or subsequent turns and things like that. So, interesting one.
Yeah.
Interesting one. So, the next thing that we've got.
Yeah, talking about things that change the meta.
Yes. Oh, yes.
The points
changes. I was wondering where you were going with that. But yes, points changes. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for keeping us on track. So yeah, it was briefly talked about. But yeah, what were your thoughts on that? Increasing costs of models. Interesting.
Well, I think, what was it? I think we calculated it at something like, I don't know, about 20% point increase, something like that. I think it was for like the cultists going from 5 to 6.
Wow.
So like it's obviously not going to be an accurate percentage.
No.
Because we don't know what the rest of the points are going to be to say that that's going to be accurate, considering it's such a small points increase. But if you think about increasing the overall points of your entire army by 20%, it does mean that you've got 20% less than what you're currently fielding now, and that could make a big difference, because that 20% could potentially be like the extra tank that you wanted to have in there for some anti-tank or anti-infantry. It could be the extra elites that you normally use. It could be the infiltrators. So it's definitely going to change how people are going to be playing the game. And I kind of hope that they include a power level change as well, because the cost of the points compared to the power level is completely out of balance at the minute.
Never made sense. It was so imbalanced. It was crazy. I don't know, from an AOS point of view, because that was brought in as a power level game, and then they introduced with the General's Handbook the points changes to make it a bit more, give people the option. So I don't know, from an AOS point of view, what are your thoughts on power level?
Well, Age of Sigmar it works pretty much as power level, like how you would get a unit that says power level 5. They can have all these types of things, and regardless of what you took with them, it would still remain power level 5. That's pretty much how the point system in Age of Sigmar is at the minute. Like a unit of 10 of something would be 140 points, and then within the war scroll for that card, it would tell you like 1 in 5 can be this, 1 in 5 can be that, and you could choose any of those options for that 140 points. There wouldn't be any alteration if you wanted to take a unit with swords and shields, a unit with double-handed axes. They'd all be 140 points if you still kept of 10 in the unit. So considering that they're still going for points and power level for like the game sizes, I do hope that that as well as point changes, they include power level changes, just to make it seem a little bit fairer. Because the old ones, I think, like I said, they're a little bit out of balance at the minute.
Yeah, massively. Hopefully they do, because I think, for pickup and playability, power level makes it a lot easier to do it. But then they are going to be introducing the new 40k app, which hopefully, it'll be interesting to see what they do with that and how it compares to something that I know a lot of people have used before for 40k, which is Battle Scribe. And whether it's more in line with the AOS app that they have currently, and I suppose we'll reserve judgment on that.
If it is anything like the Age of Sigmar app, it should be pretty interesting, because although you don't have the complete army lists, not army lists, the army traits and stratagems and stuff like that in there, you can still access each of the unit types. Look at their war scrolls on there, or like with 40k per data sheets, so you can see their movement, their attack, their toughness, their abilities, all that type of stuff as a full list. The only thing that's restricted to a purchase is the actual army book contents, such as the stratagems, the allegiance abilities, all that type of stuff. Which, as they've said, all the new codexes are going to come with a free electronic version, which you can then add onto the app.
Which is
so
fantastic.
that's going to be pretty interesting as well, because again, a current complaint with a lot of people is, and especially for me, if I'm taking one of my soup lists, I take the Forge World Chaos book, I take my Chaos Space Marine book, I have to take Faith and Fury, Chaos Demons, Death Guard, and now War of the Spider.
Yeah. It's like you're walking in with a black library, pretty much. You know what I mean? It's crazy. You shouldn't have to. I'd much prefer, especially when you're going to be needing all those, to have it on an iPad or an Android tablet or something that you can just quickly go through and check, and even have quick search functionality. So if you're looking for rules and things like that, you're not like skimming through pages. You just searching for stuff, and it's that. Now I'm sold on it. And I think they sort of said it's going to be like a couple of £1 or a few £1 a month. I think subscription based model. Again, it's all, if you're buying the codex and you're paying a few quid for the app, I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be good.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Next thing we've got on the list is terrain. So they're really fleshing out terrain at the minute. So I know at the minute it's nice and simple. You're in terrain, you get a +1 to your armor save, or for certain things it like halves charge distances if you're going through like bunkers or
yes.
Not bunkers. Like rubble and things like that. So I must admit, I've not really looked into the new changes. So why don't you enlighten me, Sarah, on what exactly the new changes are, if you know? Because I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I've read a few bits about it, and I've seen a few people on like different forums and like Facebook groups bringing up the like maybe the complexity of how some of the things are written. Because it's very wordy, some of the terrain rules, and I think that's basically to stop people from exploiting some of the rules as much as they are now, to make them very, very explicit. Because one of the things that I kind of picked up on that I liked was that you need to, especially with certain sized miniatures of certain wounds, even if you can see a little bit of them, if there's a line of sight blocked between you and the unit that's trying to shoot them or target them and the base, even if you can see a little bit of the model above the terrain, it doesn't count as having a line of sight to them. Which is going to be great for certain models. And I know plenty of people, especially like for competitive tournaments and stuff, reduce the height of some of their models by kit bashing them or using alternative models.
No, that's outrageous.
to make them harder to see. And I think making it so that, seeing a unit through a window on the other side of the reflection of a wing mirror off a tank on the other side of the and that means I can shoot you. That means I've got line of sight.
That means I've got this entire 10-man army here can shoot 10-man squad can shoot all your models.
I never really liked that.
No.
I didn't think that was a good way of doing it. So if somebody now spots somebody through a terrain feature, whatever the rules for the terrain feature are, whether it's low ruins, whether it's just rubble, whether it's a large building, even if they can see them through the windows, they're still going to have to either take like a penalty or it's going to completely block line of sight.
Yeah, I suppose that's one extra complexity to the beginning of the game to determine what terrain pieces are. I can understand in 8th it was just to keep things simplistic, but maybe there was an issue of it was a bit too simplistic, just a +1 to your armor, and people wanted a bit more survivability, especially when you've got people like, Imperial Fists and the Iron Warriors who ignore armor saves in cover, or ignore the modifier. So having that extra level, especially with things like, being able to hide, key units as well behind certain terrain pieces for survivability, because there's nothing worse.
Ultimately, as it says, if it blocks line of sight and you have no line of sight, the rule of you don't get armor modifiers for shooting into cover or something like that, it gets negated because you can't shoot them because you have no line of sight. So it should be a lot easier. It should be a lot more interesting as well for some units that had a hard time surviving their way across the battlefield to maybe using the terrain features to their advantage to get closer to the action before they get snuffed out.
So, right, okay, so that was terrain. So the last couple of things we'll go over dead quick. We've got I think it was an maximum -1 +1 modifier now. So you can't stack them. I think I heard. I may be wrong, but I think that was one thing that I heard from the rule changes. So you can't go like -2 or +2 to hit. It is now fixed, I think, at -1 +1, which is interesting. It's interesting. We'll see how well that goes, especially with new codexes and things like that bring out. Excuse me. The last thing was unit coherency. That just dropped today. So, wow, unit coherency.
No more conga lines.
No more conga lines. No more ridiculous having one unit on one side, of the battlefield, then taking away models in the middle, and then having combat units, and then still getting special rules from like character. It's just silly, very silly. But yeah, fantastic for the game, but maybe very punishing if you make a mistake. From I think what do they say now? There is a unit coherency check.
So as well as having to keep the unit in unit coherency as it's wandering around, so the check is that each model is within 2 inches of 2 other models in the unit, unless it is under 6, I think, in the unit.
Yeah, it's those big units. As soon as they take any kind of damage, if they're in a line or anything like that, they're just going to lose a lot of models. It's going to be interesting for the game, especially for screening and things like that. You no longer, I think, can screen. Like maybe if you have like 60 poxwalkers, that doesn't become an issue, but but still.
Yeah, it's like you were saying with the like bringing in a minimum of 10 guardsmen or something just to get some CP. I tend to do that with a couple of like some small units of poxwalkers or small units of cultists, and I usually have them in a line screening stuff as I'm moving up, and you're not really going to be able to do that anymore, because the moment that they start taking casualties or have to do morale checks, that type of thing, and they start losing losing models, the coherency check is just going to go out the window, because it says you need to remove models until the unit is in coherency. Yeah. So if you've got a conga line, that's no, remove him, remove that one, remove that one, remove that one, remove that one. You could lose an entire unit because they fall out of coherency.
It's massive changes. That it's again stopping that gaminess to 40k. So rather than having people exploiting something innocent like unit coherency before to get that extra buff, or to make sure they're claiming on an objective, or even claiming 2 objectives, which I've seen before. now you can't. You are literally, it is a unit. You treat it as a unit. Don't exploit it, otherwise you're going to lose models. And I'm all for that. Well done, Games Workshop. Well done for that change. I think that is a good change.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So just to, I know we've been chatting for ages now. So I'm just going to burn through these last few things that we've got. So, of all the changes, what do you think is going to be the biggest change to 9th edition?
Biggest change I think of all is most definitely going to be the command points. It's probably going to give people a heck of a lot more strategies than they currently have with their armies. Stuff like Eldari or Harlequins or something like that. If people are wanting to play like mono armies of those, there's not really many options that you've got to maximize your command points. We're now starting with like 15, 18 command points, depending on which type of thing you're playing. It's going to be massive. It's going to be massive for them.
Yeah, totally agree. Just having, having a knight army that doesn't have to rely on a loyal 32 or custodes, and the super elite armies having, maximum number of command points is going to be fantastic. It's definitely interesting. So that's the biggest change. I've put the next question is, what do you think the best change is? So,
well, the best change we didn't mention in the list, but I was kind of saving this one, and it's the tanks.
Yes, tanks.
Tanks being able to move and shoot without heavy penalties, and being able to shoot in combat. Because one of the things I absolutely hate every time I play with the Death Guard is the Plague Burst crawlers having to move and get a minus to their mortars, and having to choose out of like which one of my 2 tanks do I spend a command point on and have it so that they don't get the penalty. And trying to hit on 5s with a tank is pathetic. It just makes this massive armored weapon that's moving across the field feel really, really fragile compared to some of the foot infantry. Like even Havocs can move around without a penalty. Why couldn't a tank? And I think this definitely makes it way more interesting for anybody that just wants to field tanks, because they're going to feel a lot more powerful this edition.
Yeah, it brings back a sort of element of validity to the tank rather than getting tagged by grots or some termagants or something stupid. It just means that they're much more of a threat. If you want to get into close with them, that's fine, but they'll still be able to shoot you point blank range in the face. And obviously blast templates
as much as you want to try and tie up a Plague Burst crawler to stop it from moving onto an objective or advancing through your army, they're going to be firing the Plague Spitters during their combat phase. Whilst they're in combat.
Exactly.
So there's no stopping it.
Ooh. But yeah, sorry, one thing that I did miss as well was the blast templates as well, which are now going to be introduced. So, I think it's over.
Again, plague burst mortars with the blast template.
Yeah.
Finally, not rolling a 1 when you're shooting a unit of 30 grots.
It makes no sense. But I like that. I like that change. That makes narrative sense that a blast weapon would cause maximum damage, or even minimum sort of damage to a larger size unit. Because I think there's a minimum of 3. If the unit size is, I think, over 6 and less than 11, and then if it's over 11, it's maximum, I think it is. So that's fantastic. Not having to roll for you've got 30 boys bearing down at you, and you're throwing out a frag grenade or something. You want to be able to like take some guys down. Dear Lord, rolling a 1, it's like you've just rolled a grenade into a squad of 30 boys and you hit 1. Come on. So all right, okay. So they're the best change. So what do you think the worst change will be?
I wouldn't really label anything as being the worst, because I think they're all really good changes. I think maybe the hardest one to adapt to is going to be the terrain rules.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot of thinking about those, and especially remembering what you've declared as certain terrain pieces. We might have to, on the channel especially, have some form of visual aid to show what's what.
Like with Age of Sigmar, they had terrain dice so that you placed a dice to show what type of terrain it was. And I think sometimes, like, although it looks cool on the tabletop to have like little runes here and there, it's like, is it a terrain piece? Is it not a terrain piece? Is it just? And it'd be good, like you say, to say this area here is runes and it is this type of terrain piece. So you gain this type of bonus from being in it. If you're outside of it, you don't gain it. It's normal shooting, and it's going to make it easier for people to assess whether it's worth moving into a terrain piece, whether it's worth trying to shoot anybody that's near a terrain piece. But I think that the height of things as well, and how it's worded, getting the bonuses going, shooting inside and outside of terrain pieces, I think those are going to be a little bit tricky to get used to at first.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, but I think there's going to be an adaptability to any sort of new edition. Hopefully, if it's just terrain, I think the rest of the changes should be, seem to be positive and seem to be quite easy to adapt to. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. My last question then is, which army do you think will benefit the most from 9th in these sort of early stages? Are you going to peg it on both the Necrons or the Space Marines because they're technically getting released first, or do you have somebody else in mind?
Especially with combat being a big focus, I think the demons are definitely going to see a massive change through this. I think also with assault, I kind of think Space Wolves. As Mike's not here, but I know he'd be happy to hear that. But I think with Space Marines getting a lot of new stuff, the Space Wolves are also going to be able to use that stuff, and they're already pretty good in close combat. So I think they're really going to make the most out of the changes to Overwatch, the command points, and especially combat.
I think this is probably the first edition where I think they're trying to at least address, like, I think 8th was very much a shooty edition, whereas 9th, I think on paper, appears to be a very combat orientated edition, but they've introduced these new shooting mechanics like blast weapons and tanks being able to fire, and no negatives to move in, and heavy weapons and things like that. So it's like they really are trying to readdress the balance and have it. Oh yeah, so you want a combat army, that's fine, you have a combat army. Oh, you want a tank army, yeah, that's fine as well. And at least having this kind of well-rounded edition, and it's very, very intriguing to see what happens with it. But I suppose we won't have to wait long. I think there's possibly July a release, possibly, I think it is.
I'm pretty sure that I've seen comments and stuff from Games Workshop mentioning July. So they're doing like a little face-off thing this Saturday,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to be showing off some new models. So maybe they might drop a date.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it might go up for pre-order the week afterwards.
Who knows? We will watch with bated breath. And right, I feel like we've chatted a lot. My mouth is dry. I don't know about you, but I think let's cut this down now. Let's stop recording. It's been absolutely fantastic to speak to you, Sarah. Welcome on board again, and yeah, I can't wait to actually throw some dice in anger. Actually get into start actually playing some games and learning AOS, and I can't wait for that to be brought to the channel. So as always, I have been Chaos Cultist John. We haven't got a moniker for Sarah, but Sarah has been.
Oh, we do.
We do. Oh, do we? Please enlighten us.
Mine's the Cunning Brute.
The cunning brute, Sarah. You guys have been awesome, and we have been Blame the Dice Wargaming. So we'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.